Welcome to this walkthrough video on the Introduction to GitHub course on GitHub Learning Lab. If you're looking for a quick and fun introduction to GitHub, well, you found it. In this course, you'll learn what GitHub is and why it's so powerful. You'll learn how to perform some important actions to become familiar with GitHub, well, by actually using GitHub. In this course, you'll learn and use the GitHub flow to create branches, make commits, and introduce changes by using pull requests. You'll also learn how to use issues for discussions and collaboration. People around the world use GitHub to collaborate and contribute on projects ranging from software to policy documents and even cookbooks. You can share your projects with the world and invite your friends to help, or you can keep your projects private and still have easy access wherever you are. GitHub is used to build some of the most powerful applications in the world. It can do a lot of really cool things, but this course will focus on getting started with the basics. So let's dig into issues, collaborate with branches, and change code on GitHub by using the GitHub flow. Let's take a minute to understand what the GitHub flow is. The GitHub flow starts by creating a branch off of master. When you create a branch in your project, it's copying that project from that point in time into a parallel environment where you can try out new ideas and introduce changes, all without affecting the master branch. After the branch has been created, the next step is to make the change you want to incorporate into the master branch by making a commit. A commit can be made by adding, modifying, or deleting content contained in the project's files. When making a commit, you also add a commit message as a brief summary of what changes have occurred. A commit can just be one small change, or it can be several changes grouped together in one commit. However, as a best practice, it's usually better to make lots of smaller commits instead of fewer commits with lots of changes, and you'll understand why in just a second. Once you're satisfied with the commits that you've made, it's time to open up a pull request. Now, a pull request is saying that you're wanting to incorporate your commit changes from this feature branch into the master branch. Creating a pull request is also inviting other collaborators to discuss and review the commits you've made, which brings us to the next step in the GitHub flow. With the opening of a pull request, discussion and review of your commits can now take place. For those reviewing your commits, they have full visibility to the changes you're making and can comment to the pull request generally, or it can get as granular as commenting on a specific line of code or content change in each file. This is a great way to ensure that these commits are following project guidelines or any specific coding styles. You can then make new commits based off discussions and comments given. Now, it's very common to see back and forth comments and commits after a pull request has been opened. It's also much easier for someone to review small changes being introduced in multiple commits instead of a lot of changes in one commit. After you're satisfied with the pull request and it's been reviewed and has passed any tests, it's time to deploy your changes and verify them in production. If everything checks out and your changes are verified in production, you can merge your feature branch into the master branch. Any change that was made in your feature branch is now incorporated into the master branch. And that's the GitHub flow. It's pretty simple, but very efficient. Now that we understand the GitHub flow, let's dive into this course with a hands-on approach and see how the GitHub flow works in action. You'll notice a couple green buttons to join this course. It doesn't matter which one you click, so feel free to click either one. Once clicked, you'll see a pop-up window appear on your screen. GitHub Learning Lab will need to create a repository named GitHub-Slideshow on your GitHub account. You have the option to make this repository public or private. But for this course, making the repository public is the most common approach, but you do have the option to make it private. Note that making it private also requires a paid GitHub account. Once you've chosen your option, you'll be directed to the Introduction to GitHub Progress page. A green success notification should appear at the top of your page to let you know that you've registered for the course and that a new repository has been created. You'll also notice that the course steps to complete this course are listed on this page. The first step is to assign the first issue to yourself. So let's click on the green Start button to get started with the first step. You should now be redirected to an issue in your newly created GitHub-slideshow repository under your GitHub profile name. An issue can be opened to have a discussion or collaborate on anything related to this repository. Keep in mind that issues are only discussions. They do not modify the contents of a file or files inside your repository. Discussions can start out as issues and then be linked to a pull request where the changes are actually made. In this course, we'll be navigating frequently between issues, the instructions and discussions, and pull requests, which are the actual changes that will be made. So, getting used to this format is helpful in completing this course. GitHub Learning Lab will help you along the way by giving instructions on next steps, as well as provide feedback to your actions. The first thing you'll see is a comment from GitHub Learning Lab that welcomes you to the Introduction to GitHub course. Now, this is great. You've now begun your journey to learn GitHub by actually using GitHub. Earlier, you briefly learned what GitHub Flow is and how it can be useful. If you click on the expandable dialog arrow of what is GitHub, you get a little more information and a really cool video to watch at the bottom if you're wanting to learn even more. For now, it's important to know that GitHub is a collaboration platform built upon Git that tracks every change that you make in your project. Below this, you'll see a few more expandable dialog arrows. One for exploring a GitHub repository, and another for using GitHub's issues. Feel free to click on those resources to learn more. The last expandable dialog is for managing notifications. Once you've commented on an issue or a pull request, email notifications will start to pour in. Now, by default, notifications will be sent by email to any activity in the thread. This can be helpful, but can quickly become overwhelming. You can customize notifications in Settings by going to the profile icon and clicking Settings, then Notifications. You can also choose to receive notifications from a repository by watching, not watching, or ignoring notifications. You can then review notifications for the repositories you are already watching. As with other sections, there's a video for additional information on notifications if you want to learn more. Scrolling down, you'll see your first task of assigning this issue to yourself. By assigning yourself to an issue or pull request, you're telling other collaborators that you'll be managing this discussion or code change. So let's assign yourself to this issue. If you scroll up to the right side of the screen, under the Assignees section, click on Assign Yourself. You should now see your username and profile picture appear. You can now scroll down to the bottom of the issue and refresh the page. You should now see a new response from GitHub Learning Lab letting you know that you are now the proud manager of this issue. Your next task is to turn on GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages is a technology that allows you to serve a static website from a repository. GitHub Learning Lab has already filled this repository with some fun website content, but the rendered site isn't visible from anywhere right now, so let's change that. You can do this by going to the Settings tab for the repository by clicking the Settings link in this comment of the issue. You'll now be directed to the Settings tab for this repository. Scrolling down to the section that says GitHub Pages, and under the Source dropdown that says None, select the option that says Master Branch, and then click the Save button. Once done, you can now return back to the issue for more instructions. You can do this by clicking on the Issues tab in the top menu bar. Click on the issue that says Getting Started with GitHub. Scrolling down, you now see that GitHub Learning Lab has confirmed that GitHub Pages is now turned on for this repository, and that you can visit your website that is now visible to the public. Nice job! Now that you've completed the tasks in this issue, the next step is to close it. You can do this by clicking the Close Issue button located at the bottom of the issue. You now get another message from GitHub Learning Lab notifying you that this issue thread has been completed and to head on over to the next issue for more instructions. You can click on the Next Issue link in the comment to take you over to the next issue. You've now been brought to the second issue, where GitHub Learning Lab has provided some new instructions for our next step. Now that you're familiar with working with issues, and you already know what the GitHub flow is, it's time to put your knowledge of the GitHub flow to the test. However, if you feel like you need to go over it again, you can click on this video link to watch a great video on the GitHub flow. In our next step, we'll be creating a branch from our project. Remember, a branch is a complete copy of our project that allows us to test out new ideas or make changes to a project without affecting the master branch. Keep in mind that we'll be navigating between our issues with the GitHub Learning Lab responses, where the instructions are, and our soon-to-be created pull request, where the actual changes will be made. Our next step is to create a branch. Let's navigate to the Code tab at the top left of the page. Now that you're on the code page, you'll see a list of folders and files inside your repository. Now, to create a new branch, locate the Branch drop-down button just above the folders and files. Currently, the branch button says Master. This is the branch you are currently checked out on. To create a new branch, click on the drop-down button to bring up the text field. In this field, type the name of the branch you want to create. Now, it's usually good practice to name your branch in relation to the changes that you will be making. So, in your case, you can name the branch my-first-branch and then hit Enter. You should now see a notification appear at the top of the page that says Branch Created. You'll also notice that in the Branch button, it now says my-first-branch instead of Master. Let's now navigate back over to the issue for further instructions. We can do this by clicking on the Issues tab next to the Code tab. Next, click on the issue that says Your First Contribution to open up that issue. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll now see that GitHub Learning Lab has provided you with a new step to follow. Congratulations on creating your first branch. Now that your branch has been created, you can use it to make modifications to your project without changing the deployed or master branch. If you remember from the GitHub flow, the next step after creating a branch is to make a commit. So it's time to create a new file and commit it to your branch. The first instruction is to return back to the Code tab, but before you do so, select and copy the information in step 5. You'll be using this in just a minute. Navigate back to the Code tab located in the top menu bar. In the Branch drop-down menu button, change Master to the name of your recently created branch. To the right of this button, you'll see another button that says Create New File. Click on this button to add a new file to your branch. Next to the GitHub-slideshow repository name, you'll see a text field where we can add the file name that you want to create. Following the instructions in the issue, you'll need to create a file in the _posts folder with the name 0000-01-02- and then your username .md. Now, I'll be putting my username, which is Aaron, but remember to put your username instead of mine. You can now add the following content to the body of your file. So paste the content that you copied from step 5 in the Previews issue here. You are now ready to commit this to your branch. You can do this by scrolling down to the bottom of the page where it says Commit New File. In the first text box is where we put our commit message. This is a brief description of the changes being made in this commit. You can type something like add and then the name of your file. You'll want to make sure you're committing to your my-first-branch and not the master branch. You can now click on the green Commit New File button located at the bottom. You're now taken back to the Code tab where you'll see a new notification appear. You'll notice that your branch, my-first-branch, is one commit ahead of master. This means that you've committed something to this branch. Now that you've made the commit, let's navigate back to the issue to see your next instruction. Click on the Issues tab in the top menu, and then the issue titled Your First Contribution. Scrolling down to the bottom of the page, you have a new comment from GitHub Learning Lab. Awesome! You've successfully made a commit on your branch. Your next instructions are to open a pull request, give it a name, a description, and then click the Create Pull Request button. GitHub Learning Lab also mentioned that once you create your pull request, it will close this issue and communicate with you over in your pull request. All right, it's now time for you to create your first pull request. Let's go back to the Code tab and click the Compare and Pull Request button for your branch. Under the Compare Changes section, make sure that the base branch is on master and that the compare branch says your branch, my-first-branch. Let's now give your pull request a title. The instructions recommend something like add username's file, so let's go with that. But make sure to put your username instead of mine. Let's now add a descriptive comment to the body of the pull request. Maybe something like, this pull request adds, and then your username, file to the _posts folder. Now that you have a title and a descriptive body to your pull request, you're ready to click the green Create Pull Request button. You'll now see a new comment from GitHub Learning Lab asking you to add some different content to your file. You need to replace line 5 of your file, the one that just said your text, with a quotation, meme, or a witty caption. To edit your file, you'll need to click on the Files Change tab in this pull request, located just above the first comment. Once there, find the pencil icon located at the top right of the File Changes. Clicking on that icon will bring you back to the edit page we saw earlier. Change line 5 with a quotation or comment. Now, I'm a big fan of boxing, so feel free to add anything, but I'm going to add a quote from a boxing legend. Once done, scroll to the bottom of the page and add a commit message. And then commit your changes. You can now navigate back to the Conversation tab at the top to see your next instructions. Nice, well done. You now have successfully created your first pull request and can now merge it into your master branch. This is done by clicking the green Merge Pull Request button at the bottom of the page. Doing so will then ask you to confirm this merge. And once done, you can then delete this branch since it is now part of the master branch. And congratulations! You have now completed the Introduction to GitHub course on GitHub Learning Lab. You used the GitHub flow to create a branch, make a commit, open a pull request, Make an additional commit based on peer review given from GitHub Learning Lab, and then merged your branch to incorporate your changes into the master branch. You also worked with issues and learned how they can be helpful in starting discussions and assisting in your pull requests. Now that you're done, you can now view your changes on your GitHub Pages site. So, click the link provided in the last GitHub Learning Lab response. If you click the right arrow key, you can see the quote or comment that you added to your file. We can now navigate back to the Introduction to GitHub Progress page on GitHub Learning Lab to see your completed progress. Now, I hope this course is only one of the many steps in your journey to learn how to use Git and GitHub. There is so much more to learn and do when learning Git and GitHub, so make sure to check out the other GitHub Learning Lab courses located in the Courses tab. You're now one step closer to becoming a Git and GitHub master. Thank you for watching, and happy learning.